Robert Downen, reporter at the Texas Tribune, thank you so much for joining us. And you broke the story that really went statewide about Nazi sympathizer Nick Fuentes meeting with conservative consultant and former state lawmaker Jonathan Stickland in Fort Worth for hours. And so I want to get to that, but I first wanted to ask you, this has really led up to what happened this past weekend at the Texas GOP Executive Committee, in which the committee was a tight vote, but chose to remove a clause in there that would have banned the GOP from associating with known Nazi sympathizers, white supremacists, and anti-Semites. They removed that from a pro-Israel resolution. So talk to me a little bit about what that was like, how tense a debate it really was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very tense at times, just from the quotes kind of that we had in our story and that have been relayed to others. I think that there were a lot of SREC members, that's members of the executive committee, who were pretty stunned by not just the fact that they chose not to take up this language, but the fact that there were a lot of people claiming that it was too vague, that they couldn't define anti-Semitism, that this type of ban would, potentially be a slippery slope, to quote one person, for the party and its leaders moving forward. And not only that, I think that particularly stunning to a number of members was before the actual votes against this ban, the language that would have made this ban possible. Roughly half, by my estimation, of the executive committee also tried to have, or also fought against having a record of the vote on the actual resolution language, which I think was particularly galling to a number of members who have been pushing for more transparency, not just on the party's ties to groups like Defend Texas Liberty, but on how it's going to handle publicly these ongoing scandals.
And so what happened in the end? There was a record vote, and what were the people on? You said that the people who were calling for it were surprised by this, but what were the people who wanted this removed saying?
They were making a number of arguments, but a lot of them basically came down to the idea that that anti-Semitism was too vague to define. There was a lot of debate over some language. Initially, it was the ban was on people who espouse or tolerate anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, or pro-Nazi sympathies. There was a lot of debate on what it meant to tolerate, and concerns that this would be a slippery slope, as to quote one member. But also, there were a lot of people who were trying to make the argument that this was something akin to Marxist and leftist techniques of guilt by association, which I think that those kind of claims were particularly frustrating to other members of the committee, some of whom told me, we're having a debate over words like anti-Semitism being too vague, and yet in the same breath, the people who are saying that anti-Semitism is too vague are throwing around words like socialist, communist, rhino, etc. So I think that it really did just speak to the, I think, growing disunity amongst the Texas GOP Executive Committee and the party writ large.
And was there a recorded vote on who voted and how?
Yes, there is. And we're still kind of looking through that, but it was 32 to 29 with 32 to 29 in favor of striking the language, so opposed to the ban. And, notably, Vice Chair of the Executive Committee, Dana Myers, voted in favor of the ban. Matt Rinaldi, who has been kind of, was seen at the meeting where Nick Fuentes was, though he denies meeting him with him. Rinaldi did abstain as well. So, and I think that there were people who wanted the ban who also took Rinaldi's abstention as kind of, called it a failure of leadership by someone who really has not taken any kind of public stance on most of these scandals over the past 2 months.
I was going to ask you about the fact that he abstained, because when he abstained, he said anti-Semitism is not a serious problem on the right. And when he abstained, what was the reaction in the room?
I don't think it was really, I didn't notice any noteworthy reaction. I think there were a lot of people who probably did assume that he would abstain. And I think that, they're in talking to some executive committee members, there is sometimes it's not uncommon for the chairman to abstain from particularly controversial votes. But what they said, is that this was a moment for him to show actual leadership and make a pronounced stance on these scandals involving his close allies and friends. And he didn't. And I think that there were a lot of people who saw that as kind of an abdication of his leadership role within the Texas GOP.
And what are you hearing about potential repercussions for that?
There's a number of people calling for SREC members who voted against the ban to step down or to be replaced. Most notably, I think, was Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's statement later that evening, calling the vote totally unacceptable, and saying that he's confident that the SREC will take up the idea again at their next meeting in February. So really, this is one of the, there has been plenty of inter-party fighting over these scandals for the last 2 months. But Saturday, after this vote, I think there was really, for the first time, we saw, or not for the first time necessarily, but really saw a strong reaction from across the party in a way that I think it's going to make it much more difficult for this executive committee to vote the same way should they meet again, or should they take it up again in February.
Yeah, and obviously Speaker Phelan came out as well, criticizing that vote in addition to the lieutenant governor. I haven't seen anything about Governor Abbott's comments. Have you?
I have not, no. Both Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton have both been, I have yet to see, I think, any substantive statement on the scandals since we started writing on them 2 months ago. So,
and now they have come out. The governor has been very forceful against anti-Semitism. He went to Israel to show support. But I want to get back to the original story that you posted about this meeting with Nick Fuentes at Pale Horse Strategies, which is Stickland's business here in Fort Worth. Who else was there with him? Because you've done extensive reporting on that. It wasn't just Fuentes, right? It was other members of the Texas GOP. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think most notably, Texas GOP Chairman Matt Rinaldi, we saw him in there for about 45 minutes. Now, he also, vehemently denied knowing that Fuentes was inside, strongly condemned him and said that he was meeting with a member of the Texas GOP and they were just borrowing a conference room. But, also we saw Kyle Rittenhouse there, who has made a lot of inroads into far-right politics in Texas since he moved here, I believe earlier this year or late last year. Again, Rittenhouse also claimed later that he didn't know Fuentes was there, and as soon as he found out, he asked to leave. Rittenhouse, as far as I can tell, has put out the most strong denunciation of Fuentes' views of anyone in that orbit. But again, I also think, it is worth noting that there were a lot of other lower level names within Texas GOP politics there, including Chris Russo, the president of Texans for Strong Borders, as well as Carrie Cheshire, the group's executive director. Russo chauffeured Fuentes to and from that meeting 7 hours apart. And, subsequent reporting by us has also found that Russo was also a pretty prominent member of Nick Fuentes' white supremacist movements, operated a number of hate-filled, anonymous accounts with a lot of racist remarks on them. And I think, there were a number of other Fuentes acolytes at that meeting, including Ella Maulding, who recently moved from Mississippi to Texas to handle social media for Pale Horse clients, including Texans for Strong Borders. So it really did run the gamut from really high-profile Texas GOP figures to lower-level ones who are directly associated with Fuentes and are continue to exert control over the direction of the GOP more broadly.
And what, in your reporting, have they commented to you? All the people that you named there, have they made comments to you? What has their reaction been?
Like I said, the strategy, I think, for Defend Texas Liberty and Pale Horse seems to be just put your heads down, try to back channel things to sow doubt about our reporting. But other than that, not say anything publicly. After Speaker Phelan did condemned the meeting and called for members of the party to return donations from Defend Texas Liberty. After he did that, Defend Texas Liberty did come out with a 2-sentence statement basically saying that they opposed Fuentes' incendiary views and attempts to connect him to the PAC. But other than that, really, we are kind of in the dark. The closest thing we've gotten to a statement on the meeting is from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who spoke to Tim Dunn, the West Texas billionaire and primary funder of Defend Texas Liberty. And according to Patrick, Dunn called it a serious blunder, said mistakes were made and being corrected. But again, other than that, that's pretty much all we have to work on as far as any explanation or statement for the meeting.
Has your reporting had any impact, do you believe, on just the ability for Defend Texas Liberty PAC to endorse candidates, to raise money, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already kind of seeing that. It's whether it's I think it still remains to be seen how significant the repercussions are. But again, it's worth remembering that this was the group, Defend Texas Liberty, that in the wake of the Paxton impeachment had vowed scorched earth campaigns against pretty much anyone who voted or supported Paxton's impeachment. And I think that this scandal really couldn't have come at a worse time for them. They were really gearing up for a lot of spending against incumbents, running against them on school choice, running against them on the Paxton vote and other things. And I think that this really has hobbled their ability to, publicly move in the same way that they would have hoped even, 2 months ago.
Did you ever expect your story to resonate the way it did and to really have so much lasting impact?
I mean, I think that to be honest, I think that I'm shocked that they're actually I'm not to say I'm underwhelmed by the response, but I think I've been surprised that there has been less done from some parties. I mean, again, I think that it is really worth spelling out here who Nick Fuentes is. This is not some, edgy guy who's posting on, dark corners of the internet. He is the face in many ways of the white supremacist movement in America and in many parts of the world. He is someone who is an avowed fan of Adolf Hitler, who has called for a holy war against Jews, who has instructed his followers to beat women so hard that they fall like a building on 9/11. I mean, he has talked about, fantasized about marrying a 16-year-old when he is 30. He is, I think, a detestable character in his own right. And the fact that there are still people who are trying to undermine our reporting and, poke holes in our reporting and write this off like it's not a major deal, I think has been pretty, I've been surprised by that. So,
two other questions. Talk to me as far as comfortable as you can be. And on the stakeout, because you were there for hours trying to get this story confirmed and all that. So talk to me about, how long it was and just what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, I had gotten word a few days prior, basically saying that someone had heard that he was going to be there, and I kind of, we figured if there's even a 10% chance that Nick Fuentes is there, then we need to roll those dice. We should roll the dice. And so I think I left from Austin at 3 a.m. and got to Fort Worth about 7 a.m. and basically was in the parking lot of the Pale Horse, across from the Pale Horse offices until about 5:30. We saw Fuentes get there around just before 11 a.m. with Russo. Unfortunately, couldn't get a great photo of him because he was walking away from us. But, just kind of hung out the rest of the day until just after 5:30 when the parking lot had cleared. We had almost, honestly, we're almost considering packing it up, thinking that he had left through a back door. And then lo and behold, he just kind of strutted out, I think, assuming that there was no one else there. And it was an empty parking lot. Most people had headed home for a 3-day weekend. And, the rest is kind of history stuff.
And my last question to you is, what is next in this? What comes next? What more? Where do you think this is going?
I'm not sure. I will say that I think that when a story like this breaks, there are, a cadre, a whole host of other journalists who have been, paying attention to this type of stuff. And when something like this does get a lot of media attention, it does naturally bring a lot more people poking around. And I do expect that there's going to be some more reporting that comes out. As far as the reaction from the Texas GOP, I think that remains to be seen. We'll see what they take up at their February meeting, but I don't expect this scandal to go away anytime soon for them. And I think that there are a lot of people, both because of their sincere opposition to Fuentes and their worry about what this will mean for the party moving forward. I don't think that they want to let this die. I mean, this is, again, I think that the kind of strategy to defend Texas liberty and its allies has been to just put your head down. And I think that there are a lot of people who are, saying this is the natural, for 15 plus years now, there have been people within the party who have been warning that this strategy of incrementally pulling the Texas GOP further and further to the right and placing that incremental pull over actual policy objectives in many ways, that eventually this is the place that would get the party. And I think that, the photos we publish are kind of a perfect encapsulation of those a decade plus of warnings about where this was all headed. So I don't think that there are people who are going to just let up on this anytime soon.
Robert Downen with the Texas Tribune, thank you so much. We really appreciate speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.